If you're somebody who's struggling with moving from I want to I'm actually doing what I want to, then this video is for you. Hey there, this is Evie, and today I'm gonna walk you through the book Finish What You Start. The book aims to help you follow through with your goals in life, and it pays attention to obstacles such as lack of motivation, lack of self-discipline, procrastination, the usual things. The best thing about the book though is that besides discussing all the usual problems, it also provides solutions to each one of them. So there are two major parts in that video. The first one is the 10 lessons from the book, so I'm saving you the time reading the book. And the second part is about how to implement the lessons from the book, and I've divided this part into 6 practical suggestions that you can use right away. So the main focus of the book really is on the process of following through. And why is this even important? Well, because it gives you the opportunity to create a life that you actually love. And the author says that there are 4 different components of the process of following through: focus, self-discipline, action, and persistence. He describes focus as our head. So we have to sit down, think about our goals first, make them concrete. This is the very first essential fundamental step. Self-discipline is about the spine, so it's what keeps this whole thing together. Action is our hands and our feet, so we actually how we execute our plans and our thoughts, right? And persistence, he calls this the heart. I think this is kind of like the purpose behind your behavior, basically that energy, that inner dedication. Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to achieve this? Knowing that, I'll say, is the most important part of it, because on the days when you are low on motivation, knowing why you started can bring you up. Then the next most logical question is, why is it so hard to follow through with our goals, right? And the author suggests that there are 2 main reasons for that. The first one is inhibiting tactics. Basically, those are our own self-sabotaging thoughts and behaviors that we do to ourselves. One example is setting goals that are too unrealistic. They're just way too impossible, so you're setting yourself up for disappointment. The second obstacle, obviously, is procrastination. I'm not gonna get too deep into this right now because this whole thing deserves an entire video. Third tactic that we do is indulging in temptation and distractions. We're so easily distracted all the time, and we're just so used to that bad habit. We just allow ourselves to go with the flow. Once we grab the phone, it's hard to put it down again, right? So this is something we do, and it is a self-sabotaging tactic for sure. And the 4 inhibiting tactics in the book is poor time management. So the second main reason he's pointing out as the main obstacle on our process of following through with our plans is the psychological roadblocks. As a psychologist, I would say that this is really very linked to research in behavioral science. It makes a lot of sense what he's talking about, and I'm really glad that he broke it down into such a simple and easy to understand language. He basically says that they're mental, self-sabotaging cognitive processes that we adopt because we want to protect ourselves from failure. Put it in a simple way, if you never try, you'll never fail. So one such example is being lazy and not having a self-discipline. If you never get up from that couch and you never try to do something, once again, you cannot fail at this something. It is safer to stay on the couch. The second thing is our fear of judgment and fear of rejection. If you never ask, you can never get an answer no, right? The third psychological roadblock that we create ourselves is this perfectionism. Wanting it to be perfect before we show it. Wanting it to be perfect before we are ready to say we've done something. So we work on it. Yes, we do start working on it, but we never really get it done. And following through means getting things done. So perfectionism definitely can stop you from achieving that goal. And the fourth one, which is my favorite one, is the lack of self-reflection. If you don't sit down for a second, take a deep breath and think about why you're doing something, you're risking going from one mindless flow to another. So you're not really gonna get anything done if you're not observing and if you're not reflecting on what you're doing, because at some point you're gonna either get distracted, something else is gonna happen, you're gonna get demotivated, whatever. It's really hard to follow through and make anything happen that requires consistency if you're not mindful about it, if you're not aware of what you're doing and where you're going with that. Lesson number 2 in the book is staying hungry. I'm going to describe it this way. Very often when we think about a goal, we imagine the outcome. We imagine the success story. Let's say we want to write a book and we imagine having that book already, having people liking that book. But we don't really think about the obstacles, the efforts that we need to make in order to get to this outcome. So what happens is you give your brain the reward first. You basically make yourself happy about this potential outcome, and then you have to kind of reverse and go through the effort of making it happen. But this is not really working with your brain, because your brain just got excited, and now on the next day you have to work for it. It's like, I've already received what I wanted. Because that's the thing, that's not in the book, that's from me. The brain does not make a difference between reality and the dreaming of the thing. Meaning, you can get as excited from something that you literally experience as you can get excited from something you are thinking about. So again, if you give yourself the reward first and you don't consider the steps that you need to get there, you'll probably give up before you even started. Lesson number 3 is, and that is absolutely grounded in psychology as well, people are much more motivated to follow through with something when they want to avoid pain versus they're motivated to follow through because they want to gain a reward. Yes, we love our rewards, but dopamine is not exactly the most consistent thing. It's not the most reliable thing. Truth is that if you want to avoid pain, and it's clear for you the pain that you can avoid, if you really sit down, again, be aware of it and make it real for yourself, then you're absolutely much more motivated to follow through, to do whatever it takes, but not feel miserable, not feel disappointed, not feel full of rejection and regrets. Lesson number 4 is about making the difference between important and urgent. Not everything is urgent and important at the same time, and knowing this can help you with your time management. And being able to differentiate between important and urgent is actually relating also to being able to work smart and not hard. Sometimes we are busy without actually making progress because we didn't make that evaluation of what is really important to be done first and what is urgent. Number 5 is create rules. The thing with rules is that we're actually very used to it. We, from day one almost, are exposed to rules. Don't do that. Don't put your hand on the burning stove. Don't run in front of a car. Don't miss school. Don't talk back to your mom. Don't be late after school. Don't be late after work. Don't be late for work. All of those rules, we are used to it, and actually we are pretty good at following them. And rules actually help us. They give us structure. They give us order in this chaotic world we live in. And it's not about having every single decision in your life being under some rule. It's about having certain rules that help you build the life that you'd like to live. And when the rules are only external, meaning we only follow the rules given by somebody else, it is unlikely that the result will be a life that you like. The result will be a life that they like. But if you actually follow your own rules, then you got the point. In the second part of this video, I'm going to give you his ideas for rules that you can follow to make things better for you. Lesson number 6 is about mindset. This is obviously not a deep topic, but his point is that how you look at things does determine your experience with things. For example, very often we get this negative mindset. We do the what if in a negative sense, right? What if I fail? What if nobody cares what I'm doing? If nobody likes what I'm doing? What if people think I'm stupid for what I'm doing? What if I try and I realize I'm not even good at it? What if I move to another city and I don't like it? What if I get married and I don't feel the same way after a year? What if I quit my job for another job, but actually when I start working the new job, I don't like it? All those like what if, but in the worst case scenario way of thinking, it's a mindset. You are trying to protect yourself from disappointment by thinking about this worst case scenario, and you project that you'll be ready for it if it happens when you're thinking about it enough. But this is just not how the thing works. Your brain listens to those thoughts and it starts acting upon them. There is a thing called self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe the worst case scenario is gonna happen, you may actually help it happen. So what he's saying here, that you can switch this to a positive mindset. What if works out? What if it goes well? What if you do like the new job? What if you do love being married? What if you do like the new business or people love your new products? What if that happens? If you switch your mindset, you're much more likely to feel better with your thoughts, first of all, but also with your experience, because you're projecting positivity. Lesson number 7 is accept that procrastination is part of your behavior. It's not something that you can completely erase. You cannot completely stop procrastinating and that's it. You always more or less procrastinate. The goal is to procrastinate rather less than too much, right? We're not robots. We don't aim to be robots. We just aim to make things a bit better for ourselves. So accepting the fact that procrastination will always be there can also help you schedule it. I think this kind of helps give a peace of mind with the whole self-judging and self-criticism that we do to ourselves when we end up procrastinating. Accept it, work with it, and just don't let it become the major thing you're doing on your daily basis. Lesson number 8 is that distractions eat your self-discipline. And actually this is such a good thought. When I read it, I actually sat back for a second. I was like, that is pretty smart. The thing is that you can either make a lot of effort to build a very strong self-discipline where no matter what kind of distractions you have around you, you stick to what you want to do and you stick to your focus and to your attention. That is ideal. And some people can do it, some actually cannot. The other thing you can do, instead of putting all your effort in building that strong self-discipline, is reduce your distractions. Make it easy for yourself. Make it harder to get distracted. For example, I let this little guy next to me because I know all the notifications are off and it's sitting face down. If I really struggle with my distractions and I still check my Instagram every 2 minutes, I put the phone in the other room because I'm too lazy to go to the other room every 2 minutes to check my Instagram, and I'm basically using that laziness to help me. Lesson number 9. Pitfalls. There are plenty of pitfalls we have in our way of thinking, but the book mentions 3 major ones. First one is the false hope syndrome. This is having unrealistic expectations of change. Let's say you want to lose weight, but you don't ever go to the gym. You buy the super fancy expensive supplements and you believe they're gonna make you slim in like a month because that's what the advertisement said. I know this is like a very cheap example right now because everybody who is listening to this right now is thinking, of course I know this is not gonna help, but in reality, very often we have this big idea and we make the tiniest little effort for that big idea, hoping that's gonna work because one person said it worked for them. We kind of know it's not the truth, but we're hoping. False hope syndrome. Pitfall number 2 is overthinking. This literally can block you from action. I know that sometimes you feel like you need to be prepared for every single scenario. You need to sit down, think, and consider what you'll do in situation A, situation B, and you just need to be prepared. Yes, but the more you're thinking and the more you want to be prepared, the more you're not doing anything. And truth is, you'll never be ready anyway, so you might as well start doing and get better and get more and more ready to achieve your goal by doing, because the overthinking is only going to make you stay on that couch longer. Pitfall number 3 is not knowing yourself enough. That is something that every single person has struggles with because we actually don't really interview ourselves on a regular basis. But it's a good exercise. Ask yourself, when are you more focused? When are you less distracted? What time of the day works best for you? What time of the day you're most energetic? What environment supports your focus? Interview yourself. Get to know yourself. Then you have all the information that you need to support following through with your goals. Lesson number 10 is about daily systems. He talks about those sets of behaviors that we have on a daily basis. I like to call it routines. And that lesson actually relates to the previous one. Analyzing what you do on a daily basis helps you influence what you do on a daily basis. For example, make a list of the activities you did today. Make a list of the activities you wish you did today. See the difference and see what you can do about it. Alright, we came to the second part of this video, how to implement the lessons from that book. And number 1 is build your internal motivation. Internal motivation is the things that we do for ourselves because we want to do it, right? And there are questions that you can ask yourself to support, first build and then support that internal motivation throughout the process of following through with your goals. 4 questions that can help with that. What do the things you care about represent? What are the positive things you receive from doing those actions? What impact you have on others? What are the negative consequences you can avoid if you choose to follow through? I advise you to write those questions somewhere and ask yourself if needed daily, because this is how you reinforce your motivation. This is how you remind yourself why the heck you even started doing this, why it is important to you. It really just helps. Now, the second way to implement the lessons from that book is create your external motivation. External motivation mostly relates to things that we want to avoid. Like, for example, you're motivated to go to work kinda because you don't want to lose your job, because you need the money to pay your bills, right? It's not something that you really feel like doing, but there is a boss right there who is asking you to come to office, or if it's remote work, to be clocked in at 9 a.m., for example. This is external motivation, and you are doing it because you want to avoid the pain of getting fired, for example. But when it comes to your personal goals, you have to create those external motivations yourself, because usually you're the only person who cares about your own dreams. So use the same logic of accountability and find a person, a friend, or a family member who can keep you accountable. For example, report to this one person who is checking on you every morning one thing that you're gonna get done today in terms of your goal, right? In the end of that day, you have to report back to this person, did you do it or not? Better if that person asks you, actually. I know it can be a bit like a nagging situation, because this one person could come across as annoying to you, because all the time asking you, hey, did you do that? Did you do that? Did you do that? But the trick is that if you want to avoid their criticism, or if you want to avoid them nagging on you, you just have to get the shit done. And then, voila. Another way is a bit tricky, putting money down. See, when you invest money into something, you don't want to lose it, right? For example, if you give a friend $100 and you tell them, I'm gonna have the money back when I finish that task. Well, you were very externally motivated to finish that task now. And the $100 is just an example. The trick with this is that the amount of money has to mean something for you. If you make a lot of money, $100 might not be enough. Put 1,000. And you might think, I don't want to lose 1,000. That's fine. Just get what you said done, and you're not going to lose anything. Next is self-bribery. You have to be careful with this. This is rewarding yourself, and it really works as long as you are strict with it. Let's say you have a reward if you finish the task, you watch Netflix for 1 hour. Make sure you don't watch the Netflix without finishing the task. At some point, it's gonna become a habit. I promise you, the longer you do something, the easier it becomes for you. And it does turn into a habit. At the beginning, it's gonna be harder, but this is also why not everybody is making their dreams come true, because it's a hard process to stick with your decisions. And the way to stick with it is, again, reward yourself every single time. When you succeed, give yourself something. Make sure that what you receive matches the effort. For example, don't give yourself 1 hour of Netflix just because you did 1 page of your assignment. Do the Netflix when you finish the assignment, otherwise it's gonna become too easy. And then you have to think about even more rewards, and the day is gonna be full of rewards. You see where I'm going with that. Alright, so we are done with internal and external motivation. Number 3 is constant reminders. Listen, I know that whatever you want to do sounds super important to you and you think you can never forget about it, but actually what happens is life. You get distracted. There are other things to think about. There are other plans. There are other people, and they have their needs and desires. You can get carried away with those, and you can actually forget about it, or just not prioritize it anymore. But if you have constant reminders around yourself, hitting you in the face, it's harder to forget, right? The thing with constant reminders is that they need to be novel to your brain, otherwise the brain is going to start ignoring them, right? For example, sometimes I put those little motivational reminders as a desktop on my phone, so every single time I grab my phone, there's that sentence that is pushing me through every single time I look at my phone. And what I do is I change them. I change my wallpaper like 5 times a week probably. I don't know. It's really about keeping the attention of my brain on what I want to get done. You can have it on your refrigerator, you can have it as a popping up reminders on your phone. You can think about ways, but just keep it different. Alright, earlier I told you that he's talking about rules and how rules actually help us structure our days. And he gives 6 examples of rules that you can follow. Rule number 1, evaluate yourself. Every single time when you don't feel like doing the thing you decided to do, ask yourself, if it wasn't for laziness or fear, would I give up? As simple as that. Rule number 3, have 3 tasks maximum a day. 3 tasks that are important to you or somehow relevant to your goal. No more than 3, because you don't want to get overwhelmed. There's nothing good about one day being the skyrocketing performer who is getting everything done, and then the next day being so exhausted that you don't do anything, because the whole thing is about building those habits, building that consistency, making it easier for you in the long term, right? And those spikes up and down, up and down, up and down, actually really not so useful. The more sustainable way to do it is have realistic tasks per day, and 3 is his suggestion. Next rule is to create limitations and restrictions. I'm not a huge fan of this because he suggests to have 5 limitations and 5 restrictions per day. To me, this is a bit too formal. It's becoming a bit too robotic, but this is me. All those rules are options. You can cherry pick the option that works for you. Specifically about the limitations and restrictions, he says write 5 things you cannot do and 5 things you must do, of course related to your goal. So when you feel unsure or demotivated, sit down and write, I want to. Finish that sentence, write it down, objectify your thoughts. The thoughts just happening in your head are not so meaningful to you, especially when they're positive, because they don't feel so real, right? The overthinking is real, but the positive thoughts, right? So write it down, observe the thought, I want to, put it on a list and see what you want, feel it. This is your intention and this is gonna help you. The second thing you should write down is I will. Specific sentence. I will get up at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Look at that sentence. Make that commitment to yourself. That is your intention. That is your actionable intention. All you have to do after that is follow through. No overthinking anymore. And finally, he says, write, I will not. Again, he's really working a lot with that doing and not doing, and psychology really also supports the idea of telling ourselves what to do is great, but we also have to tell ourselves what not to do, because then you create that framework of behavior that is all aligned with your intention, with your goal, and with your direction in life. Rule number 5 is interesting. I've never heard it before. It says think in terms of 10-10-10. Before you allow the temptation to take over, ask yourself, how will I feel about this negative, not useful behavior at all in 10 minutes? How will I feel in 10 hours? How will I feel in 10 days? Let me give you one example again. I'm a smoker, unfortunately, big time struggling with it. And when I look at the cigarette and I ask myself, how will I feel in 10 minutes is great. I'm gonna feel very good. I'm gonna satisfy my need. I'm gonna feel relaxed and chilled. It's gonna be very nice. In 10 hours, I'm gonna want another one because it's already depleting and I want to have my hype again. In 10 days, I'm gonna be coughing, having my lungs pain again because it's not gonna be just one cigarette, and I'm gonna feel terrible. So it's really about this short-term happiness versus the long-term happiness. Choice is yours. His last rule relates to so many other things. It's the 10-minute rule. It's almost the same thing as Mel Robbins talks about in her book, The 5-Second Rule. The idea is that when you get the temptation of grabbing your phone, having the cigarette, putting Netflix on, whatever the bad temptation happens, tell yourself, all right, I'm gonna do it in 10 minutes. Let's see how I feel about this in 10 minutes. The idea is to interrupt the flow of the negative or the bad habit, right? Here the point is that it is very likely in 10 minutes you'll feel less tempted to do the bad thing. All right, and we arrived at the 4th implementation strategy from the book. And this one is about how to decrease your procrastination. Tip number 1 is temptation building, meaning combine one unpleasant task with a pleasant task. As simple as that. I'll give you an example. I don't like cooking, but I like listening to podcasts. And I usually feel like I never have time to listen to a podcast in my day. So I link this behavior, enjoyable behavior, to the tedious behavior. And I end up looking forward to that time when I'm gonna finally put my earpods in and listen to something cool. And the cooking, it just happens in the background. Trick your brain. Next tip is to start small and simple. See, procrastination thrives on inertia. So it's really about interrupting that inertia. And a way to interrupt it is start with doing something very, very little from your big chunk of goals that is just gonna give you that energy, that confidence, that reassurance It's possible. It's completely possible that you follow through with your things. And also, obviously, you're not procrastinating because you're doing something. Very likely, after achieving a small task, you're gonna be ready to do a little bit bigger one because now you're in the right mood. His last tip is a bit controversial. He says that sometimes fear and paranoia helps to avoid procrastination. And I completely agree with him that this is a very good tip that should not be used often. When you have a deadline, yes, you're gonna get the thing done, right? But with your own goals, sometimes you have to create this paranoia. Like sit down and think, what's gonna happen if you never work on your goal? How are you gonna feel? Feel a bit terrified maybe. Maybe feeling terrified for a second of the pain that you're gonna feel and the regret you're gonna feel if you don't follow through is gonna make you do it. Finally, he gives 5 strategies on how to decrease your distraction. The first tip is actually similar to my phone tip. He's saying that a lot of bad habits are based on automatic behavior, right? It's not that you're thinking about Instagram so much. It's just that it happens, right? You're just checking your phone. Make it harder for you. Put that phone away. Really, you're lazy enough to get up every 2 minutes to the other room to check your phone. If you make it harder, you're gonna do it less. His tip number 2 is on multitasking. So you already probably know that you are actually not good at multitasking because we're not really doing 2 things at the time. We're switching between the 2 things. Obviously, this is not good for your focus. If you have to switch, you are literally changing your flow of your whatever behavior you're doing. So if you focus on one major task at a time, you are increasing not just your productivity and efficiency, but also your focus and concentration. Tip number 3 is the don't do list. It's really great. I've used it when I had to study for things I didn't want to study for, and it does work. It really works in the long term because if every single day you sit down and you write 3 things you're not gonna do today, well, eventually you get tired of yourself. And the next morning, when you keep saying don't do that, it gets printed in your head and you're thinking about it. So when you grab your phone, let's say again with that phone, but don't check your phone during the first 1 hour of your studying, for example, right? When you actually reach for your phone, you feel guilty because it's so imprinted in your head, don't do it. And you're like, oh gosh, I'm just not gonna do it. I'm not. Yeah, it really works in the long term because if every single day you sit down and you write 3 things you're not gonna do today, well, eventually you get tired of yourself. And the next morning, when you keep saying don't do that, it gets printed in your head and you're thinking about it. So when you grab your phone, let's say again with that phone, but don't check your phone during the first 1 hour of your studying, for example, right? When you actually reach for your phone, you feel guilty because it's so imprinted in your head, don't do it. And you're like, oh gosh, I'm just not gonna do it. I'm not. Yeah, it's all about tricking your brain again. His next rule is something I've never heard before. It's the 40-70 rule. Basically, he says, start acting when you have at least 40% of the information needed, but no more than 70% of the information needed. And this is how I understand it. If you have less than 40%, doing is kind of irresponsible because you really don't know what you're doing and you might not be efficient with what you're doing at all. Less than 40% is really very little information. But if you're waiting to have more than 70% of the needed information, then you're basically procrastinating because you never have all the necessary information and you're gonna learn a lot more through doing than just researching and reading about the topic, for example. So yes, 70% is when you are good to go. Waiting for more than that, you're procrastinating. And finally, probably the nicest one of all of those is do nothing. Yes, doing nothing helps you focus later on. Think about this. Your brain needs sometimes to, well, go crazy and daydream and overthink, for example. Okay, yes, you cannot ask your brain to be this perfect robot that is all the time focused. And giving it the time and the freedom to be distracted and to do nothing energizes your brain. It's kind of like feeding up the battery again, so you can after that go back to work and knock it out. Alright, so that was the end of this book, and I will overall say that I really like the way it was written. It's very easy, very approachable, very useful as well, because you can just use those actions right away in your life and will benefit from it. I'm really happy that I found this book and that I decided to make a video about it, because I really find it useful. I think it's so actionable and so easy to follow and understand that it's just, there's no excuse not to try at least some of those tips, right? So if you like that video, make sure you subscribe, because there's more to come. I love reading books and I love sharing them. So if you like it, stay with us, and I'll see you next time.